Assalamu alaikum, guys. Welcome back to the show. Our next guest is Sultan Choudhury OBE, who is an executive chairman of Offa. Sultan has spent over a quarter of a century in financial services, his career taking him to Deloitte, Charles Schwab's, Barclays, Al Rayyan Bank, and most recently Offa. Starting life as a chartered accountant, Sultan is one of the leading names in UK Islamic finance. Welcome to the show, brother. How are you? Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Really well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for having you on. This is one of those topics that I'm very, very, very intrigued by because I don't know anything about it. So hopefully you're going to educate me and educate everybody at home as well. First great question is, why have you called the institution Offa? O-F-F-A, is that correct?
That's right.
Please break it down for us, brother.
Well, it's a really interesting story. So first of all, we're an Islamic finance company. So we provide financial products constructed in an Islamically adherent way, so according to the Sharia. Okay. Now, what's that got to do with Offa? So Offa was a king in what we now know as the British Isles in the 7th century. And what is now England was split into 7 Saxon kingdoms. And the biggest kingdom was Mercia, which was right in the middle. And actually the capital of Mercia is on the edge of Birmingham, where Offa is based. We're based on the edge of Birmingham in Solihull. And so there's a kind of regional link, but it's much more than that. But why pick a king from the 7th century?
Yes. Why not a sultan from the 15th century or something?
Well, they discovered in the 90s, I think it was, they discovered a coin from Offa's reign. So, we got King Charles on our new notes. There was a coin that they discovered. It was a gold coin. It was a dinar.
Yeah.
It was a dinar.
Now I make
right?
the connection.
Yes.
Yes.
And on one side it said Offa Rex, which is
Yes.
King Offa in Latin. And on the other side,
Yes.
it said La ilaha
La ilaha
illallah.
illallah.
Right?
Yes.
It had the Shahada.
Yes.
And you're thinking back, these archaeologists have discovered a coin, and here we are in the 21st century.
Yes.
And 14 centuries ago, there's a gold dinar, which signifies trade with the Islamic world. The biggest king at that time is using the testament of faith of Islam on a coin in the 7th century. Now, what does that tell you? That Islam is not some new entrant, and Islamic finance is not a new entrant to this island.
It's been around 1,400 years, even in the parts of the UK.
And it's been an interconnected world for many years.
Yes.
And so that's the inspiration. It's the coin.
Yes.
And the regional base that we're in, in Birmingham, and I think that's why it's a name that just has a tremendous story behind it.
Yeah. The minute you mentioned the coin, I made a connection because I've seen the coin online all the time.
Yes.
But when I saw the thing on here, I was thinking, but now I made the connection. It's very clever, very clever. How is Offa helping to reinvent Islamic finance for the 21st century with modern paperless systems?
Right. So again, let's start at the beginning. So Offa was the first bridge financing company that did it Islamically in the UK. So it's Sharia-compliant bridge financing company. Now, what is bridging finance for the uninitiated? It's a way of funding a purchase of a property very quickly. So those of you who have been through a mortgage process know that it's quite cumbersome. It can take many months. The conveyancing takes ages. So people often may turn to a bridger, particularly if you're buying from, an auction, for example. You're buying from an auction, you can't take many months to buy that property. So they turn to bridging finance. So one of the hallmarks of bridging finance, apart from the fact that it's Sharia compliant, so there are certain assets we won't touch because, they're not ethical, like tobacco, alcohol, institutions, gambling. But apart from that, and obviously it's not interest-based, it's got to be fast. It's got to be efficient. It's got to help investors achieve their goals. So what we did in the last 2 weeks, we also launched a product for, if you like, the everyday investor, property investor, which is our buy-to-let product. So people know about buy-to-let, when you buy a property to rent out. Yes. And many professionals do that to support, to supplement their income, to supplement their pension. They buy a property to rent out. And so we decided as a team, and this is the team, by the way, myself and some of my colleagues, we were the first people to launch buy-to-let in the UK, back in the late 2000s in our previous job. So this is the team that brought it out before. We know what works well, what doesn't work well. But with speed in mind, with efficiency of processing in mind, we decided to launch it this time off the back of technology, so that some of the cumbersome, paper-heavy processes that you see in Islamic finance in particular, but also in mainstream finance, we wanted to eliminate that. So you get a quick decision, you put the bare minimum of paperwork that's needed to get your finance, you get good updates throughout the process. The legal process is actually much simpler as well, because we essentially use one lawyer to manage both sides of a transaction. All of that comes together to make our product really, really, really slick.
Well, apparently it's gaining momentum and it's quite popular, because the question next is why Islamic finance is increasing in popularity with non-Muslims. I understand that 40% of Offa's customers are non-Muslims. What's drawing them to this particular offer?
So
no pun intended. I said offer.
Yeah, there you
Did
are.
you hear that? Did you pick up on that? Anyway,
our offering, sorry, no. So our offering is suitable for everybody, right? So the offer products to date have been in bridging finance, as I mentioned. And you've got to ask yourself about the consumer. So this is going to be the same for our new product, the buy-to-let product. Your propensity to consume is based on a number of factors. You're going to be looking in terms of finance. You want to avoid interest if you're a devout Muslim. You want a faith adherent product. But that's not enough, right? If I said to you, here's an Islamic product, but it's, chugging along like a tractor, and the service is poor, and the pricing is high, it's not enough generally for everybody, right? So you've got to get all the other buying factors sorted, right? So you've got to be competitive in your pricing. You have to have great service. I mentioned the kind of elimination of cumbersomeness by using technology. And the fact that Islamic values are essentially universal values. They're ethical values.
Yeah.
You put that together, and actually, why wouldn't a lot of non-Muslims or people of other faiths or none, right, be interested? And that's the case. And it's not just reflected in our products. Many of the Islamic banks will tell you that a lot of their savings accounts are taken by non-Muslims. So there is a genuine interest in ethical products in this country.
So in terms of setting things up, what kind of challenges have you faced since the initial boom in Islamic finance in the UK? Because I remember when the Sharia compliant mortgages came out, there was a lot of hoo-ha. Is it halal? Is it not halal? So I would imagine that's probably one of the challenges you face, but you can maybe give us an idea of others that you've come across.
So I was involved in the team that launched the first Islamic bank in the Western world, right? And that was Islamic Bank of Britain. And when that came out, there was phenomenal interest. The first Islamic bank, people were coming to us really almost just to have the badge. Look, I've got an Islamic debit card in my wallet. Real interest and a real kind of boom in take-up. However, I think what happened was there was a mistaken assumption that you just put Islamic on the door, everybody's going to leave their mainstream high street banks and just walk into a bank that people had never heard of and weren't sure about the products, didn't understand Islamic products, right? And of course, that assumption was patently not true. As I already mentioned, that other factors are in play. And so one of the challenges was, after that initial interest, how do you sustain people's interest? How do you get a bigger share of their wallet? How do you get them to make consumption decisions, big consumption decisions, like buying a house is one of the biggest consumption decisions you'll ever make. How do you get them to keep coming to Islamic finance? And so one of the things that we decided to do was at least get people to taste the product, have a good experience, rather than assume everybody's going to bring everything. Let's launch an attractive savings account. So you don't have to give up your main banking. Open a savings account. Dip your toe in the water, taste the product, understand Islamic finance a bit more, allow us to communicate with you, build a deeper relationship. And then as that confidence and trust is really important in financial services, right?
Of course.
As that trust grew, then the financial services grew. But of course, there've been ups and downs. It takes a long time to make money in retail banking, because it's like a Titanic. It's a ship. Once it's profitable, it makes money for a long time. But you've got to have the deep pockets and the persistence and the patience to make it work. And so that period where you're establishing Islamic finance in the UK, that I guess was it was a tough period, because you've got to have the faith and the belief that this is an essential service for the Muslim community. So yeah, we kind of went through that, and then alhamdulillah, as technology started to play a bigger part in the economic and Islamic environment, it allowed lots of startups like Offa to come into play and design products and disrupt the market, which was the domain of the big banks. And when I say big banks, the Islamic banks are not relatively big, but the domain of the banks. But if you look at people like in the mainstream, like Revolut and Starling and whatever, they've really come in and disrupted the market. And what we're finding in Islamic finance as well, there are a number of players, whether that's us at Offa or Wahid and the investment side, and other players I could name. We're trying to disrupt the market and make different, more customer-friendly offerings for the Muslim consumer and others.
Yeah, you mentioned starting an account with yourselves. What other products do you have at Offa that you can offer?
So Offa's primarily in the finance market. So we don't do deposit accounts at the moment, and there's plenty of Islamic banks and investment houses in Islamic finance that you could go to. But what we do is the investor product, the buy-to-let product. When you're buying a buy-to-let home, and that could be from just a single home. I don't know. It's a professional buying their first investment product. It could be homes in multiple occupancy. It could be a portfolio. It could be what we call a multiple unit freehold building, right? So there's kind of a bunch of stuff. There's auction, bridging finance, development, a refurbishment of a investment property. So we're in that space at the moment. So it's very much aimed at the property investor.
Yes.
But I think what you'll see is as we grow, we'll start trying to expand into other areas, inshallah, things like home finance, things like car finance. We'd love to get into that.
What is the future of Islamic finance in the UK with all the challenges, with all the competitions, with all the difficulties you've been through so far? What is ahead of you? What are you aiming to do and to achieve?
Look, I think as Muslims, we have to always be optimistic, right? We kind of try and look at the glass, half full. And we're always sanguine about what we can achieve, because if I look back to when I started in Islamic finance, it was a tough gig. I think 9 out of 10 doors I would knock about presenting our products. You'd be kind of pushed back,
slammed the door, slammed in your face.
I don't understand your product. I don't understand your company. But look where we are now, right? There's billions and billions of assets in Islamic finance in the UK. The UK is the biggest non-Muslim hub of Islamic finance worldwide.
Really?
Right? Yeah, as a Muslim minority country,
yes.
you get lots of foreign direct investment from Muslim countries. We know in London, the tallest building, the Shard, that was financed from Qatar.
It's a lady that owns it, isn't it?
It's from Qatar, actually. Qatari. So, we know there's a lot of foreign direct investment. A lot of that has to be structured Islamically. Secondly, there's a huge domestic market. Muslims are now, is it 3.9% of the population, growing to 6%? Projections are kind of pretty big. So there's a kind of groundswell of demand from the younger generation. They're much more interested in it.
Much more au fait with the process.
And there's more products for them. So I'm very sanguine and optimistic about Islamic finance. And I think what will also be really interesting is innovation. So currently we've got ways of doing things, but I think we've got to be pushing the borders, the periphery of our products, making them much more risk and reward sharing. Because we could talk about it for ages, right? But there's a range of how Islam and Islamic finance is applying the principles of Sharia. So some are very much, look, I found a solution, we stick to it. And some are saying, actually, we should always be working for better solutions. Yeah. And I think it's a progression. I'm not an absolutist. It's not like going from A to Z.
And stop.
We've got to move it forward by being in the industry first. So I'm very optimistic.
Awesome. How can folks at home get in touch with you?
Well, you can go to our website, which is www.offa.co.uk, or go through your local broker. Many of the brokers will give us a call.
Inshallah. Sultan, are you ready to try some of Zaka's food?
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely.